And I chose this topic because there's so little research on it and it affects so many people around the world. So, Alzheimer's is basically when brain cell connections and cells degenerate and die, which causes memory loss and the destruction of other mental functions. So, beta amyloid proteins are mainly responsible for Alzheimer's because they cause pore formation, which causes leakage of calcium ions and disrupts membrane potential, affecting cell communication. So, abnormal levels of the beta amyloid proteins can clump together, which forms plaque that collects between neurons and disrupts cell function, affecting signal transduction pathways, which we learned about in our last unit of AP Bio. So if you can see in this first image, here you have a normal cell communication pathway with two neurons communicating between dendrites, but you can see in this version, you have a buildup of amyloid plaque, which doesn't allow these neurotransmitters to be properly transferred between neurons. So there are several genes that are associated with Alzheimer's, and this is something that's still being researched. But the most common is called apolipoprotein E or APOE, and it's normally involved in metabolizing fat. So it has three forms. The first one reduces the risk of Alzheimer's, the second one increases the risk, and the third one doesn't affect it at all. So you inherit one APOE gene from each parent. So if you get one copy of APOE before, you would have an increased risk of developing Alzheimer's. But if you have two copies, you would have an even higher risk. But it's kind of interesting because not everyone with one or even two copies of APOE4 develops Alzheimer's, and some people who have Alzheimer's don't have any APOE4 genes. So it kind of shows that there's other genetic and environmental factors that are probably involved in the development of Alzheimer's. So some of these other genetic and environmental factors that cause Alzheimer's are shown here. So the first one is CLU, which is a gene that normally helps regulate clearance of amyloid beta from the brain, because an imbalance in the production clearance of amyloid beta is what causes Alzheimer's. So a mutation in the CLU gene would probably lead to Alzheimer's. But there's also a lot of environmental factors that can cause Alzheimer's, including brain injury and exposure to toxic chemicals through, for example, smoking. So this diagram kind of just shows some of the effects of Alzheimer's, including a decrease in the metabolism of lipids and cholesterol, which going back here, you can see that APOE is involved in metabolizing lipids. And there's also a decrease in amyloid beta clearance. So the treatment of Alzheimer's, again, that's something that's still being researched. And, Alzheimer's affects 65 million people all around the world. So definitely more treatments are being researched. But diagnosing Alzheimer's in its early stages is really hard due to lack of symptoms. And treating it in its later stages is also very difficult. So medications like cholinesterase inhibitors are used to treat Alzheimer's to reduce symptoms, but there is no cure. And scientists do not fully understand how these cholinesterase inhibitors work, but they think that it prevents the breakdown of acetylcholine, which is a brain chemical believed to be important for memory and thinking. And as Alzheimer's progresses, the brain produces less and less acetylcholine, so the cholinesterase inhibitors may eventually lose their effect. But in the future, scientists hope to look beyond treating symptoms of Alzheimer's and addressing underlying disease that causes Alzheimer's. So yeah, that's my presentation.